Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. So, I feel like split on how to handle talking about this movie. I don't feel like I need to invest the amount of time I would normally invest in a full spoiler review for this movie, but I've also kind of given my general non-spoiler thoughts already in my shorts that I threw up on social. So I kind of want to also keep it spoiler free so I can talk a little bit more in detail about things I mentioned there. So we're kind of gonna do a combo because there are a few things that I have to talk about that are spoiler oriented, but the first half of the video will be spoiler free. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair? Take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in first, spoiler free, and then a little spoiler filled, into The Little Mermaid. And like I said, I think I want to do both because I just don't feel like I need to do two videos for this one. But nevertheless, one of the, I think, probably most anticipated films of the year, specifically just to see how it is received and how well it does, is The Little Mermaid. I mean, you could not have created like an initial storm of negativity than taking probably one of the most beloved animated features in the Disney realm and race bending the main character. The minute that it was announced that Halle Bailey was going to be playing Ariel, I went, oh no. One, I've said this before, I just like my toys to be represented the way that I've grown up with them. So my initial thought was like, bummer, like Little Mermaid is not going to be how I've pictured Little Mermaid my whole life, and that's going to be the movie that's going to play that game. However, while I know that hate still exists out there, when that first teaser came out and you heard that little girl's voice, and I mean, Halle Bailey is not a little girl, she's a young woman, but when you heard her voice, I went, oh damn, I think we're gonna be okay, because at the end of the day, Ariel is a mermaid. A mermaid doesn't need to look like me, or a female version of me with red hair. Mermaid can look like whatever, man. It's a mermaid. It's a mythical creature. It doesn't really exist in the world. Maybe it does, but I don't think they're real. But like I always say, once you get past the waves, anything can be out in the motion, so we don't know. But nevertheless, I don't think it really matters what color the mermaid's skin is. And when you heard her voice, I went, the only thing that matters with the character Ariel is that voice needs to be so magical that it is absolutely heartbreaking when it is taken away from her. And that's what Halle Bailey was bringing. And I was like, okay, maybe we're going to be all right. And then we saw what we were getting with the things that are in the water. And I have not been a big fan of these realistic-looking animals in these live-action adaptations. Specifically with this movie. Like, the thing I was the most worried about was anything that was under the ocean, because real things under the ocean are terrifying. And I don't typically love to be scared in a scar yourself for life type manner, which the ocean can do to me when I'm going to see a Disney movie. And I wasn't necessarily all the way on board with the Melissa McCarthy casting, like, not what I would have done. And everything else that wasn't Halle Bailey, I was legitimately nervous about. And after seeing the movie, I've come to this determination. However you felt about this movie going into it is how you're going to feel coming out of it. I don't think that this is a movie that's going to change anyone's opinion. Except Halle Bailey. I think if you go and you watch this movie and you had a negative opinion about Halle Bailey before the movie, I do not know how you could walk out of that movie with a negative opinion of that girl. She is unbelievable. Like, her voice, I said this quickly and briefly in my short, but like, Part of Your World, one of my all-time favorite Disney songs, is not a song that I necessarily recognized as a painful song. You know, like the idea of this mermaid that wants to live, you know, out of the ocean and up on the land, like, having a dream that you don't think you'll ever get to have, like one of those. All of a sudden, listening to Halle Bailey sing those lyrics and add this emotional weight and depth to how she was singing it, like, I was streaming tears down my face during Part of Your World. Like, it was mind-blowing. Like, it changed the way I saw that song and how I've seen things in the Little Mermaid world. And I said this in my short, but, like, when people say Ariel, I will no longer think first of the animated version. The first thing I will think when someone says Ariel is Halle Bailey. She is 100% that character, and I cannot overstate how phenomenal her performance is, from her voice. But like her voice gets stolen. So for about a third of the movie, she's not speaking, and she is still captivating on screen the entire time when she can't talk. Anything she does, you are just glued to the screen. My only knock is the fact that, like, I don't understand why we couldn't have made her hair red. And I, as you can see, I'm kind of crossing streams today. I've got my Aquaman shirt on because we're going under the sea, which I want to talk about next. But I also feel like Aquaman is maybe one of the reasons that I have issues with this movie. Things like Ariel's red hair. The visual look to Mira in Aquaman. Everybody was like, oh my God, boom, there's Ariel right there. And, Disney went this other route. I think just casting Halle Bailey was good enough. You could have made the hair a little bit redder. But honestly, everything that she's doing in the movie just captivates you in a way where you're like, yeah, Halle Bailey is Ariel. But just about everything else in this movie is like hit or miss. Except for Jonah Hauer-King. This kid, wow. I mean, absolutely grabbed my attention immediately. I didn't know anything about Howard King. Like, going in, didn't know him from, a regular Joe on the street. And this dude captivates you immediately in that opening sequence. And then he's one of the spots where you get a new song. You get a Prince Eric song while they're out on the ocean. And that song kicked ass and crushed in a way where, like, I really liked it was included because it made Howard King become the second best thing in the movie. And when him and Bailey are together, the chemistry between the two of them is also so strong that when it's on the verge of being broken, it's heartbreaking. And that was the one thing I was hoping, was like, the only thing I need from this kid is to have chemistry with Bailey. And he did. But then he was really good on top of it. But once you get past your two leads, for me, based on how I was feeling going in, everything else here is kind of hit or miss. I love the voice performances from Daveed Diggs, Awkwafina, and Jacob Tremblay, which ironically are the only three animals that talk in the movie. Everyone else is a merperson. So every other sea creature or thing that you see in the ocean just behaves like a sea creature. One of the issues that I have with this movie. But the performance from those three, specifically Diggs, really, really good. I loved what they did with Sebastian from a story standpoint, and what they gave Diggs to have throughout the course of the movie, and kind of how he tags along. They added some things for him, and I just thought he really captured the essence of Sebastian. While the voice definitely has a different vibe than the original, Diggs really makes it his own, and he is, I think, of the voice performers, the one that pops the most. Awkwafina is a ton of fun. If you're a fan of Awkwafina, you'll love her as Scuttle. And Jacob Tremblay, he doesn't have a ton to do as Flounder, but, the moments that you get with him, I thought he worked from a voice performance standpoint. It's the visual performances that I have issue with. Like, you kind of get used to how strange-looking Sebastian looks by the end of the movie, but, like, he's a creepy looking crab. Like these, and I guess it's like why the other creatures don't talk, because the talking doesn't really always necessarily work with these characters, and especially someone like Scuttle, who is so zany in the animation like realm, to have like a real seagull, it just, like, I don't know. There's another thing too with Scuttle where it's like, they took it a little too far in my taste. We'll mention this when I talk spoilers, but like, I was just like, what is, and it was one of the first things to take me out of the movie. And the second thing to take me out of the movie was Under the Sea. Ironically, I think the first 20 minutes of this movie are perfect. Like, adaptation-wise, it's pretty much direct to the point where why I hate the real sea creature things. Like, I had a traumatizing event of sitting mostly like this for about a minute and a half when the great white is chasing Flounder. It's terrifying. But the win for Ariel is so much more satisfying, I guess, in some ways, because you're like, oh my god, it's over. It was terrifying. But that worked, ultimately, for me, even though I was not looking forward to it, and I was afraid that that's what it was going to be. And it was very scary, for me at least. Like, that stuff worked. Part of your world was unbelievable. And then, like I said, the scuttle thing happens, and I'm like, all right, now I'm starting to second-guess things. But then, again, like I said, you're riding with Sebastian. Diggs is so good, and you're getting to Under the Sea, and I'm like, it's my favorite Disney song of all time. And it's the thing that they dropped the ball on the biggest, in my opinion. It is visually beautiful. I'll give Under the Sea that. The performance is fine. I have no issues. It took a minute to get used to Daveed Diggs' singing voice because it's very different than what your classic Sebastian is. So when you're in your head, you're just like, you're hearing the original. It doesn't mesh all the way. But once you get into it, I think Diggs does a great job. And like I said, visually, what you see on screen is very nice to look at. They had some cool visual things. But there is one serious issue with Under the Sea that we're going to talk about in the spoiler side that I was like, no. How do you drop the ball on Under the Sea? It's the easiest gimme that there is. And it infuriated me to no end. And it was like the second but biggest thing that took me out of the film. And it was hard to get me back after that. Because all I could do was see the things that weren't working. Unless Halle Bailey or Jonah Howard King were on screen. And that brings me to Melissa McCarthy, where I think of all the things in this movie, however you felt about that casting, it's not going to change. The performance is not going to change your opinion. I was not a fan when McCarthy was cast. I've talked to people that have seen the movie that were fans of McCarthy's casting, and they loved her in it. I think Ursula's just fine. I think it's a fairly forgettable performance, in my opinion. It's pretty status quo, and I think you could have cast different people that would have brought another level to it. And the thing that really stands out the most for me when it comes to the Ursula stuff is when you get to Vanessa. While I think it was a huge ball drop moment to not cast Chloe Bailey to play Vanessa, which is Ursula's human form, because she looks very similar to Ariel. And Chloe Bailey and Halle Bailey, they're sisters, and they do look very similar to each other. But Jessica Alexander, who ends up playing Vanessa, I think blew Melissa McCarthy out of the water. Like, she gets, like, such a short stint, but she has this one moment when, like, everything's going not according to plan, and she just, like, has this screaming laughing fit where I was like, that's terrifying. I wish that this Vanessa Alexander girl would have been Ursula the whole movie. From that realm, I just thought McCarthy was fine. She didn't blow me away. She didn't add anything to the Ursula character. And like I said, I think there are just different routes she could have gone that would have been more interesting. And when it comes to Ursula just on screen, I did think they did some cool visual things with her. The Poor Unfortunate Souls, while there is a lyric change in that one, it's an omission, so you don't really notice it. And I thought that set piece worked pretty well. Even though, like I said, I think you could have had a better performer in there as Ursula. But yeah, McCarthy, just not my cup of tea personally. And then I thought maybe the biggest, maybe disappointment thing. I was pumped for Javier Bardem as King Triton, and I saw the other day that him and McCarthy apparently want some prequel, Triton Ursula movie. No, that shocked me because I thought Javier Bardem mailed this one in. I thought he was so forgettable in this movie, and Triton is a character that could have been a real force for just a couple moments. And I mean, the emotional stuff didn't hit, which was kind of weird for me. And it was just one of these things where at the end of the day is a bit of a mixed bag. The music is good, but I think some of the changes specifically to Kiss the Girl weren't needed. And honestly, for someone like me who's such a diehard, again, another one of my favorite all-time Disney songs, I'm singing along to that the way that the song goes, and you get mild spoiler. I won't say this one. Well, we're getting right to the spoilers, but like you get to what the change is, and I was just like, I thought PC Principal had written the line. If you're a South Park fan, and that was the stuff that I was nervous about, and the things I was nervous about for me didn't work in this movie. The changes to really only Kiss the Girl didn't work. But like the visual of the real fish wasn't working for me. The fact that you could drop the ball with Under the Sea. There are lots of wonderful recreations. Like I said, the first third of this movie is perfect. It's so good. Halle Bailey, it just blows you away. But everything else, it's up and down. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's how I feel about most of these live action movies that, yeah, you know what? It was worth the watch specifically because you're looking at the birth of a superstar with Halle Bailey. She's off and running now. With The Color Purple coming, like, she's about to blow up. But this will be the thing that you look back and go, that was the moment. And I think it's worthwhile for that. Same with Jonah Howard King. I think this kid could have a future, and I'll be fascinated to see where you put him. I think he could be really versatile. And if he ends up being that, you look back and go, this is the moment. But outside of that, everything else, I'm going with the animated film. So to enhance upon how I feel, let's dive into some spoilers. And we'll start with Kiss the Girl. So if you don't want to know anything, get out of Dodge now, because we're talking full-fledged spoilers the rest of the way. But Kiss the Girl, the line change, I should have pulled it up. I didn't. I apologize. But it's basically like, boy, use your words and ask the girl. And I was like, I get it. Like, we live in a world, like, consent is very important. And if I'm being honest, I'm probably one of the few men in the world that when that moment arises, because I am socially kind of awkward and I'm just always nervous when it comes to women. I like, you talk to some people, they'd be like, oh, of course, pretty good with like the ladies. It takes a minute for me to get there, and usually at the end of a good date, like if I've had a good date or I feel like the vibe is there, my move is usually like on the hug, like, can I kiss you? Or like, oh man, I would love to kiss you right now, and kind of see what happens. But I would say 90% of circumstances, people who are not me, that vibe's just there and it happens naturally. And I think when it comes to Little Mermaid, that's the scenario. These two have had a day together. They've had an absolute ball, and now you're just at that moment. I don't think the lyrics need to be changed. That's just me personally. And like I said, this is a guy who does. Can I kiss you? Like, that's my move. But I'm goofy, so it works. I know that that's not the norm, and I don't think the scenario that's in Kiss the Girl is a scenario where we need to be pushing consent down people's throats. And look, some of you have already told me, like, it was subtle, you barely noticed it, but you really appreciated it, and that's great. If that's the vast majority, then they did the right thing. But I don't think that is a song that needed a tweak at all. I think that the general consensus understands what's happening there, and I don't know. I'm just, call me old school. I try to be progressive. That's just not one of those spots. But if it was a change that worked for you, then hey, cool. Maybe it was the right one. It was something that I laughed. I literally laughed out loud, and it pulled me out of the scene, which really sucked because Bailey and Howard King are so good together, and that scene was pulling you all the way in. And one of the things that I thought the trailers did a terrible job, and so did the promotional materials, everything was making this movie look muted and dark. And I gotta tell you, it's not. I don't know if they changed it in post after people saw the trailers, but like the Kiss the Girl stuff was so dark visually in the bits that I had seen prior to the movie. I didn't get that vibe at all during the film, and overall I thought the film was pretty bright and colorful and vibrant, which is a huge plus for The Little Mermaid. But it was one of these things where it's like I was just so engrossed in that moment, and like you had me full sucked in the way you did the first third of the movie, and it's like, cool, this is that moment where like the third act is about to take off the way the first act was, and that line pulled me right back out again, and it was hard for me to kind of find my footing, even though I thought the third act does a pretty good job. I mean, the visual with Ursula was maybe, I guess, one of those areas that was kind of dark where like she gets the power and goes like full like giganto mode. And it definitely looked funky with Melissa McCarthy being the actor there, but I definitely appreciated the fact that the movie went to that length. And like I said, overall, I think most of what you get in the third act works, but like there are just moments where it's like it pulls you out, and like I just wanted to be fully engrossed. And I think, like I said before, the biggest ball drop moment, and the thing that hurt in that regard the most was Under the Sea. And while it's visually wonderful, and if you've never watched the animated movie, maybe it'll work for you, but like the lyrics of Under the Sea are literally designed to tell you about what you were watching on screen. Like, when I hear that a carp is playing a harp, I want to see a carp play the harp. You know, when the sturgeon and the ray, they get the urge and they start to play. I want to see a sturgeon and a ray playing instruments. And there are 0 instruments in Under the Sea. None of the lyrics match up to what you were watching on screen. It was mind-boggling. And the only thing I could think of is Aquaman, the impact. We saw in Aquaman, we saw the freaking octopus playing the drums, which, again, like right out of Little Mermaid. And it was like, I don't know, did Disney feel like they couldn't do or recreate things that were done in Aquaman? I'm sorry, but Under the Sea needs to have musical instruments, in my opinion. The whole point of that song is that the sea becomes a live band. And if you wanted to tweak it, maybe not have real instruments, but have them playing things under the sea that would make those types of sounds or noises, or create the music that you're listening to, fine, go for it. But when you're telling me that a bass is on screen playing some brass, I better see a damn bass playing brass. And instead, what you end up seeing is Sebastian and Ariel sitting on the backs of sea turtles that aren't even swimming. They're walking on the bottom of the ocean. And that's like there's a long stretch of where Sebastian is just rattling off fish and instruments, and that's what your visual is. And I'm sorry, for me, you're talking about my favorite Disney movie of all time and my favorite Disney song of all time. That's unacceptable for me. And when I say it's a mixed bag, that's what I mean. I think the changes don't help the movie, even though some of the additions I think did, like the Prince Eric song. But yeah, I mean, like there were just moments where I was like, this didn't work. And I feel like a lot of it is when you're taking the animation away from the story. Like, having these real creatures. I couldn't have fun with Flounder and the shark. Like, when I watch it in animation, that's kind of a fun sequence. It's holy god terrifying to watch a real great white chase Ariel and Flounder. And like, absolutely destroy the ship. I won't lie to you, the sequence was great. They nailed it. But, like, when I say mixed bag, these are the things I'm talking about. And from a spoiler standpoint, like I said, you recreate wonderful moments. You know, that shark sequence, as terrifying as it was, part of your world, the opening boat sequence, the crash, like there are so many things. Even giant Ursula, like, they nail a lot, but there's enough that they drop the ball on where, as I said in my short, when you're getting to a score, I can't go big win on this one. So let's get the Sea Maniacs up. Spoilers are over. You can come back now. I'm done with the spoilers. We're gonna do the score. You see the Sea Maniacs on the board, and like I said, I think I've probably said these things to death, but Halle Bailey, magical, better than advertised. Jonah Howard King really, really was a wonderful, like, thing I wasn't expecting. Like, he was so good. Most of your performances, at least on the voice side, Daveed Diggs, Awkwafina, Jacob Tremblay, really enjoyed. The Real Looking Fish didn't work for me. Javier Bardem, I thought he mailed this one in. And Melissa McCarthy, I think if you were pumped, you're going to really enjoy it. But if you were like me, where you were like, I wish you would have gone a different route, she's not going to change your mind. And that's how I feel about this movie in general. While they nail some things and they miss some others, I think however you were feeling about this movie, if you're excited, you're going to love every second of this. If you had nervousness and uneasy feelings and thoughts, kind of like myself, I think you're not going to love this movie. And if you are just going to be a hater to hate and not even try to give it a chance, you're just going to say nonsense. That's where I'm at. And where I fall with that is kind of how I felt walking in. 2.5 out of 5 Sea Maniacs. Like I said, I think you really nail some things. Halle Bailey literally is Ariel forever. She is my forever Ariel. Accomplishing that in and of itself is a massive feat, because I, as a child, was in love with Ariel, even if she was a cartoon. Halle Bailey has completely become that character for me, and that's a huge win. And yeah, everything else is just kind of up and down, up and down. And for me, that's middle of the road. So this is another one of those live action Disney films where, it's probably more in the upper tier, I guess you could say. But for me, most of these tend to be a mixed bag where I walk out going, all right, I'm glad I saw it, but I'm going to probably go with the animated version anytime I watch these things. So there you go, man. Those are all the Seaman's thoughts, both non-spoiler and spoiler. Score is in there. I've been talking for way too long. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna flip it over to you. What are you guys thinking? Where do you land on The Little Mermaid, man? How excited were you for this movie? Did it hit all of the things that you were hoping that it would hit? Were you nervous about this movie? Did it hit all the things that you were nervous about? Anything you got, really, man. Just keep the hate out. This is a hate-free place. But if you got legit criticisms, man, anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, on the live-action remake of The Little Mermaid, put it down below in the comments section. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Seaman anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions, you just want to show a little love and support because you dig what I got to say or how I think about things. Well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nations where you can do all those things, and you can do that simply by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts, and until next time for the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. I've been the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those Seaman goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.